You stand up to fetch something, cross into the next room, and it's gone. No warning. So you retrace your steps, because everyone retraces their steps, and half the time it works. But this is not a small failure in you. It is not your age. And it is not the door either, which is the part nobody tells you. So if it isn't you, and it isn't the doorway, what is it? And why right there, at the threshold, and almost nowhere else? Stay, and you'll get two answers, in order. The one science gave in 2011, and the one that came for it 10 years later. Start with the part nobody tells you. In 2015, Gabriel Radvansky, working with Kyle Pettyjohn and Junsung Kim at the University of Notre Dame, put the question in a lab. Younger adults and older adults, the same virtual building, the same task, carry an object, get quizzed on what you're holding. They wanted to know whether the years make this worse. They don't. Both groups had memory disrupted after a doorway, and the size of that disruption was similar in the two age groups. The paper's own reading is that processing at the event level is relatively untouched by ordinary aging. 20-year-olds do this, 70-year-olds do this, at about the same rate. So the thing you've been quietly filing as a warning is standard equipment. The machine has always done this, which makes the real question louder. If it isn't wearing out, why is it so precise? You don't lose the thought on the stairs. You don't lose it halfway across the living room. You lose it in the exact meter where one room becomes another, a gap in a wall you walk through without noticing. That is a very small, very specific place for a thought to die. And for about a decade, science was sure it knew why. In 2011, in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology, Radvansky and two colleagues, Sabina Kravitz and Andrea Tamplin, published 3 experiments out of Notre Dame, and they were built to be hard to argue with. People moved through a virtual building, pick up an object, carry it to the next table, set it down. Sometimes that walk crossed a room. Sometimes it crossed into a new room. The distance was held identical either way, which is the whole trick. And at unpredictable moments, a probe. What are you carrying? After a doorway, people were worse. Averaged across 5 experiments in this line of work, the error rate for the object in your own hands ran at about 9% when you stayed in the room, and about 16% when you'd crossed into a new one. Nearly double the mistakes, for the same walk through a different shape of space. Then they left the computers behind. Experiment 2 used real rooms in a real lab. Actual walls, actual doorways, 6 blocks, each different colors and different shapes, that each participant loaded into a box and then covered with a lid, so that they could no longer see them. They then walked, across a room, or through an identical room but with a doorway. They then set the box down, and were handed 2 minutes of arithmetic, enough to stop them rehearsing the list under their breath. They were then tested on what was in the box. After a doorway, more people got it wrong. So being in an actual real room, rather than a virtual room, didn't help. For experiment 3, they added a new step. They added a return trip. They allowed some participants to cross the doorway again and re-enter the first room. Same room, same walls, same table, the whole original context reinstated. Retrace your steps. It didn't help. People who went back performed no better than people who simply left the room and did not retrace their steps. Going back did not bring it back. Radvansky's explanation is the one that made this famous. A doorway is an event boundary. Your mind doesn't hold your life as one continuous tape. It cuts it into episodes, and a threshold is one of the cuts. Cross it, and the old episode closes and gets filed. The intention didn't decay. It got shelved, one chapter back, in a chapter you've stopped reading. Underneath that sat a detail that matters more than it looks. 2 doorways were worse than 1. Not because you'd moved twice, because you'd been in 3 rooms, and 3 chapters compete harder than 2. It was never the walking, it was the filing, which lands you somewhere absurd. Avoid doorways? No. To see why not, ask why a brain would be built to drop things at a threshold at all. Oliver Baumann at Bond University in Australia puts the trade plainly. If your brain decides it's in a different context, then the memories from before belong to a different network of information. Separate compartments. And compartments buy you something enormous, far more total capacity than one vast workspace where everything is wired to everything. You are not carrying a defect, you are carrying the bill for the thing that buys you the capacity. And the bill comes due in the same place every time. Compartments are cheap in the middle and expensive at the edges. Transitions are where things get lost. So it's the door. Except it isn't. Because 10 years after Notre Dame, A team in Australia went looking for the doorway effect and couldn't find it. March 2021, in BMC Psychology. Jessica McFadden, Oliver Bauman, and their colleagues at Bond University in Queensland, working with the Queensland Brain Institute and the Max Planck UCL Centre in London. 4 experiments, and they had better equipment than anyone before them. Deeply immersive virtual reality, the kind where a doorway is a doorway to your whole body, not a rectangle on a screen. If crossing a threshold is what wipes the thought, this is where it should have screamed. It didn't. People remembered fine. Bauman's account of what happened next is almost funny. Their first thought was that their participants were simply too good, that the task was too easy and everyone was just remembering everything. So they made it harder in one very deliberate way. They didn't touch the doors. They didn't touch the rooms. They added a second job: count backwards while you walk. Load up the working memory and leave the architecture completely alone. That's when it showed up. Under load, crossing a doorway made performance break down. Sensitivity to the probes dropped, and answers skewed towards saying yes whether or not yes was true. Not a tidy little forgetting. Accuracy coming apart. And they kept pushing. Real environments with partitioned corridors. Watching someone else make the walk, passively, on video, so the body never crossed anything at all. Neither one produced any evidence of the effect. Look at the shape of that. The doorway on its own did nothing. The doorway plus a full head did everything. Now be careful, because this is where it's tempting to overshoot. This does not delete the 2011 work. Radvanski's participants really did forget, in virtual rooms and in real ones, and returning to the room really didn't save them. What the Bond team did was find the condition. The effect is real and it is conditional, and the condition is you, which changes what that moment in the kitchen actually was. You didn't stand up empty. You stood up already holding things. The message you haven't answered. The thing you said on Tuesday that you're still turning over. Whether you locked the car. And riding on top of that stack, newest and lightest and attached to nothing, was the intention. Go get the scissors. Then you hit the threshold, and your mind did the only thing it ever does at a threshold. It closed the chapter and opened a new one. And in that half second of filing, the thing you were barely holding got set down. So the forgetting wasn't the failure, it was the receipt. It's the moment a mind that was already over its limit gets quietly audited, and the audit happens at the threshold, because the threshold is when the filing runs. Not you, not your age, not the door. Load. Which is good news, because of everything on that list, load is the one you can actually move. Bauman's word for it is immunize. Single-mindedness protects the intention. When one thing is running, the threshold costs you nothing at all. It's when 3 things are running that the forgetting starts showing up. So the fix isn't to concentrate harder at the doorway. It's to arrive at the doorway carrying less. In practice, that's smaller than it sounds. Say the thing out loud before you stand up. One sentence, not a list. Scissors. You are not trying to remember harder. You are trying to be holding one thing instead of 4 when you reach the door. Radvanski has a second one, and it's better, because it doesn't rely on you at all. Carry a physical reminder of the intention through the threshold with you. Going to the kitchen for a bowl, go holding your hands as though the bowl is already in them. Fetching the scissors. Make the scissors shape with 2 fingers and walk with it. It looks ridiculous, and it is. It also works, because it refuses to be filed. A hand held in a strange shape isn't an idea sitting in a chapter that just closed. It's an object crossing the threshold alongside you, and objects don't get shelved. 3 seconds, and no willpower involved anywhere in it. That is the whole point. Willpower was never the lever. So the next time it happens, and it will happen to you this week, notice what it actually was. You didn't lose the thought in the doorway. You were carrying too much to get it through. A threshold isn't where thoughts go to die. It's a shelf. It's the place your mind sets down whatever it was barely holding, so its hands are free for the room in front of you. And almost every time, you never notice, because almost every time, what you set down there was nothing. The one time you notice, it was the scissors.